All right.
Nice.
Ooh, we made it. It's Sunday. Welcome to the Comic Book Conservators live show, episode 42. We've already got a full house. We've already got a super chat from Don Carter. Thank you so much, Don.
Oh, nice. Thank you, Don.
Oh, we got an exciting show to share with you guys today, guys and gals. We had a few gals last weekend. I'm pumped. How are you guys doing? Welcome, everyone. Why don't we go around the horn? Phil, say hi to everybody.
Hey, as always, here co-hosting with Dr. Paul, I am Phil from Phantom Restoration, coming to you live from the border of Queens and Brooklyn here in New York City. You can find me on Instagram at Phantom Restoration or the website and my little name down there. So
Captain Larry is literally flying at the moment, so we have a couple of guest stars. Say hi to Jim, who's returning, I think, for the third time on the show from Key Issue Collectibles. Say hi, Jim. Let everybody know where they can find you.
Hey guys, Jim from Key Issue Collectibles. You can find me at Key Issue Collectibles on Instagram. There's links to videos and stuff, and I'm all over the Facebook groups.
Welcome back. We're going to do our B segment all about Jim's new technique. New to him. He developed it independent. Maybe some others have also independently developed it, but we're going to go through it in detail today. And I think it's super innovative. It solves some problems for pressing that I haven't had good solutions for prior to this method. So I'm excited to hear more about it directly from him.
same.
And then, of course, we have returning co-host Jack from Shelby's Comics. Say hi to everybody, Jack.
Hi, everybody.
Oh, my. We got some ear flicks. We got some stuff going on. Let everybody know where they can find you, Jack, please.
So you can find me right here at Shelby's Comics. We haven't been very productive in dropping some content in the past month or so because, been working on a little thing called a book. And but yeah, we're real excited about that. Everything's going well with the Kickstarter. You got 3 weeks left. If you don't know about the book, thank you, Paul. If you don't know, a little less 3 weeks.
Incredible. It's already up to almost 10K.
I know. We've hit a big milestone. We've gone past 118 backers, or right at 118 backers. We're almost about to hit that $10,000 mark. And
very cool.
Yeah. I just dropped an update, but if you want to read it, or I'll tell it to you, is that I decided not to do any more stretch goals, that we're just going to everybody that has ordered something physical is just going to get the stuff for free, just straight up free. We're not going to worry about it, trying to entice you or anything else. And we've had some great reviews. The book is now expanded out to 14 chapters from 12, and we've expanded some sections and clarified some things in there. And of course, we actually met with Matt Nelson this week, and he's real excited and looking forward to giving his 2 cents and maybe even getting more involved than initially thought. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I just want to add to that. We've been overwhelmed with the support for the book. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Super great.
I also want to say thank you to Shelby, who's been a great collaborator. Thank you to everybody who contributed, which includes a ton of people, both of our other 2 co-hosts here, Phil and Jim, but also all across our community, including Jerry the Jitterbug, who we met with this week to review his contributions. And he is going to be on an upcoming episode. So those of you that are fans of Jerry, look forward to that. Just a little bit of housekeeping. It is available, the book, exclusively right now on Kickstarter through the end of January. After that, it'll be available on Amazon. Through the end of January, though, through the Kickstarter, you get it at a discount, and you get additional options like signed copies and the deluxe edition, etc. So we'll put a link. I'll put a comment. I'll pin a comment to the top of the video when we're done with a link, and then I'll put a link in the description as well. So if you're interested, please check that out. Again, thank you so much for the support on the book.
Yeah, Jack just wrote the chapter on pressing because he's really good at laying on top of comic books.
Nice.
Yeah. So best way to press a comic. Get a cat to lay on them, you know.
Also, a little bit of more housekeeping. This episode brought to you by AG and Archivist Adrift. I'm not sure about AG, but Archivist Adrift, definitely. Jason has his own YouTube channel. You should check it out. He features comic book conservation there. Thank you so much, Don Carter, for the super chat already in this episode. And we will give you thanks at the end of the episode. And of course, you're sponsoring next episode. Thank you so much. So we have two segments as we normally do. I have a segment focused on a conserved comic that sold in the past week. It's a big boy. So we're going to go through that. And then, as I mentioned before, we've got detailed look at wet stacks, Jim's method for pressing comic books with faster, better, cheaper, and more economically. So maybe even better results. We're looking forward to that. Let's say hi to the folks who popped in. Hugo Danner, Mike, my buddy, is here as usual. Anyone from California, hope you're safe and well, of course. Rick Nestor, hello. The aforementioned Don Carter, Maurice Devereaux, as usual. The Professor Peter Alachi, check out his channel, Experiments in Conservation. Archivist Adrift is here as usual. And let's see. Oh.
So Wet Stacks doesn't have anything to do with wet t-shirt contest. It has to do with comic books.
Why not both?
Yeah. What do we have to be so limiting?
Exactly.
I had to get my one in. I thought I'd get in early.
Who's the professor talking to about the CGC 6.0?
I don't know.
What, behind you?
Elucidate us, Professor. Let us know who you're talking to. Who else do we have? Vulu's here. R.S. Callie is here. Silver Spidey is here. Kurt Lloyd is here. Welcome. JCP is here. Just Hey Mike Now is here. And Vanna's here. Welcome.
Dr. Paul, I think he's referring to that sweet all-star behind you. That's 6'5". Oh yeah. Those yellows and reds just pop out. You can't not notice it.
I added a new book to the All-Star collection, and it is freshly back from CGC. It's literally back from CGC today. Mm-hmm. Just threw it up there. Just threw it in my registry.
Very nice.
50.
Matt must sent that overnight because we were talking about it on Friday.
I was just harassing him about it on Friday and received it today.
I know. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, you must have overnighted it.
Billy Pilgrim is here. Welcome to the show. All right. So thank you, Professor. If indeed that's what you're talking about, I appreciate it. As you know, I've been working hard on the All-Star collection, and I'm over the hump. I'm more than halfway there, and I've got the big boys under my belt. So it's pretty gratifying in terms of my collecting goals. So thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. I didn't think he was talking. He wasn't talking about me though. He's talking about Don Carter posted to the Facebook group. And let's just, since it's a segue, talk about the comic book conservation community. This is our Facebook group where we talk about what else? Comic book conservation. We're closing in on 400 members. We'll probably have 400 members certainly by the end of January. And just a tight-knit, super collaborative, super supportive group. If you don't get enough of your fix of conservation here, come check us out over there if you're a boomer and you're still on Facebook. Don Carter did post a recent video and pictures, etc., there on one of his conservation projects, and that's what the professor was talking about. So,
And thank you.
other-
And real
Go ahead.
quick, thank you to Silver Spidey. We did add New Zealand to our shipping options, but also this week we had to add Japan and the Netherlands. So we are really, really thankful of our international people that have shown interest in the book and
Absolutely.
to be sending out to all these other countries. So
The
thank you.
support, yes, the support has been amazing. All right, without further ado, let's jump into our conserved, what are conserved comic books worth a segment for this week. This book on the right, Action 7, the second Superman cover, 1938, sold in the past week. And it's kind of insane. I'm pumped to talk about it. I love these Schuster covers, and I love the early pre-war Golden Age stuff that's really crafted in a way that it just wasn't done later when they were more mass produced. So let's jump right into it unless anybody else has anything to add. So as I mentioned, Action 7, second Superman cover. Obviously, seventh appearance of Superman, maybe not so obviously, but Superman's featured in every issue of Action. And so this is his seventh appearance, but only second cover. They really didn't know he was going to be the runaway hit that he was until they got the sales figures back. And so that's why he doesn't get another cover until number 7. What is it, number 13? And then he's got all the covers for the rest of the run of Action?
I think it's 15.
15? Yeah.
Or maybe, or actually,
No, I think it's 13.
17. It is 17.
Yeah. It's one of those in there. I do not claim to be an expert on these early Action comics. Look how few copies there are in the census, though. This is fewer than Action 1. And I'm not entirely sure why. I mean, I wonder if there are just, there's got to only be a single digits Action 1s that aren't slabbed. I wonder if there are a few more of that, of Action 7s that aren't slabbed. On the other hand, I mean, we're talking about a book that goes for 5 figures in, dog meat condition. And really, I think if this showed up in a 9.4 or higher today, this number 7 might be $1 million comic. I mean, it's that significant of a book now. Hard to imagine that there are more than just a few like whales who like raw books. It seems to me almost all these would be slabbed. But nevertheless, fewer copies than Action 1, 32 universal, 18 restored, 2 qualified, 6 conserved. So you can see there just aren't that many sales of this book. It's very difficult to talk about fair market value of this book because there are just so few out there. People that have them don't want to sell their copy. If they do, there's no telling when they'll ever see one again. So let's talk about the closest, most recent, relevant universal sale. So this is a 5.0 that sold actually toward the end of the pandemic, if I'm not mistaken. I'll show you the date in a little bit. But this is the nearest, most recent universal sale. It's got front cover tracing, left top front cover small piece out, left top front cover small tear, spine stress lines, whole book large bend, whole book crease through book, left center back cover small tear with crease, back cover wear, front cover wear, interior foxing. Despite all that, it presents pretty well and has white pages. Yeah. White pages. Got boys and girls. That's it's a nice book. This is a very nice book, despite all those flaws. I think they technically hold it at 5, but you can see, looking here at front back, it presents really well, and it's an honest book, right? So I would expect it to bring a pretty healthy hammer price at auction.
Wow.
And so this was March 30th. So not pandemic era, but what is this? Nearly 2 years ago now. 156,000. I think the market was generally for comics was still selling off around this time, but Golden Age is probably stabilized. So I assumed this book would bring about this same price today. And I adjusted accordingly for a 6.0. There were some historic sales that led me to believe that a 7.0 would sell for about 200 grand. So today, so I placed the 6.0 universal at 175,000. That's an estimate.
It's reasonable.
What's 25 grand among friends, right? Go Collect, actually, their algorithm places it at about this same price. But I looked through all the sales in the previous 5 years, and I didn't see any reason to believe that a 6.0 today would sell for what a 5.0 sold 2 years ago or 20 months ago, something like that. So I put it at 175. That's my estimate. So that's our baseline for looking at this book here, which also presents really well. To me, it does present better than the 5.0, and it just doesn't have those tiny little pieces missing. You'll see when we get to the Grader's Notes, it has actually very little conservation.
Yeah.
So this is a strong book. Also, white pages. Again, think about that. Pulp paper that's over 80 years old with white pages is really something. Grader's Notes indicate a 1.25 inch split bottom of spine, light creases right bottom of front covers, small, very light creases left bottom of back cover, very small tear top of back cover, small piece out of right bottom of interior pages 1 through 4, small stain bottom of pages 32, light staining to cover, tear with crease right center front cover, light stapled tears. Again, really an honest book. Note that it says conserved, but the Grader's Notes do not indicate any kind of conservation. So this is something we talked about last week. It's not clear to me why that conservation interventions have been removed from the Grader's Notes. This one does say, can somebody read it so I don't?
Cover clean.
It says just cover cleaned. I wanted to make sure I got the wording exactly correct, right? So it says conservation includes cover cleaned. Yeah. That's all it says. My presumption here is that, it does mention a light staining to cover, and then it mentions staining on the interior. I'm guessing that the cover stain was lightened, and that's why this book was hit with a conserved grade. But notice no tear seals, no reinforcement.
No.
Really a very light touch here. One would consider this, I think, a candidate that would have less of a discount to Universal than one that had heavy work. That would be if we lived in a logical world, right?
When you put them side by side, this copy looks a little bit faded. So I'm not sure if it's sun faded or if that's maybe because of the cleaning.
They are both Heritage sales. I don't know if Heritage has adjusted, if they have perfect lighting for the last 2 years, if they've adjusted any of the conditions of their photography studio, where they...
yeah, I mean, the one on the left, the Universal, is an old label. I don't know when that picture was taken. Normally, the ones with the older labels do seem to be a little bit brighter or darker.
Yeah, I presume that Heritage does their photography when the item goes to sale, because not when it's slabbed, right? So this was sold about 20 months ago ish.
Yeah.
That said, I noticed this too. It could be a little faded in number 7. There could be some fading associated. It could also be lighting. To me, you don't have the deep red in the Action Comics or in the Superman or in his cape, right? That's where
consistent. All the red's consistently.
Yeah, it's consistent, right? Even the oranges on the building, the blues, the greens.
That said, it's just being cleaner. You can see the details like in the villain's suit better,
Suit,
right? The checks and everything. It's certainly not offensively faded. That's for sure.
No.
So here we are. Let's get guesses. Jason's in at 85K. Jamie says, "Hey, Dad." Welcome to the show, Jamie.
That's my daughter.
I figured.
Oh, nice.
Who else wants to take a stab
What do you
at
guys think?
what this hammered for in the last week at Metropolis? I'm sorry, at Heritage. I have another book in a moment I'm going to show you from Metropolis. Rick's in at 110K. Peter says 120 among friends. Miles for Comics, welcome to the channel. Oh, my buddy David's here. Welcome, Starman. 84.5K because, 85K was just too much.
If you pulled the 5 and you said that was basically the most recent sale of the universal grade, right? I mean, and we already know
around this grade, like anywhere within 2 points of this grade.
But we know too, like it's not like 10 copies of this book are selling a year, obviously.
Correct.
So I think that there is a weird psychology involved once you get into the like 50K plus, category with stuff. So I could see how it's light. Conserved are normally going to go for a third, but I could see this going for a bit more. So I'll go for half of what the other price was. So the other price was, how much was it again?
140, I think.
156.
It was 156.
78.
125.
78. Jim's at 125. Vanna's in at 97K. Bob
76
Stewart's
or-
Ben Stewart's at 100K. Vulu's at 75K. Shelby, did you want to make a guess?
I'm with AG. I think around 60.
60. Okay.
Can I say one thing? We don't do this very often on the show, but just a shameless plug for the show. If you're watching and you're enjoying the show and you want to give it a thumbs up, heck, we'd really appreciate it because it does the algorithm well. It helps other people, see the content and it's recommended to them. So we appreciate every one of you live viewers and any one of the people watching it post live. So
Thanks, Phil. That's absolutely true. Why don't we reveal? We've got a couple of winners. 75 grand it hammered for. So I think we have multiple people that were very close, including co-host Phil, Vulu.
Vulu was right on the money.
I feel like I had one other person at 75. No.
Can I say too? I respect.
But some really close.
I mean, it's like Phil said. That's pretty much half price. So go ahead, Phil.
At least in my estimation in the history when we do these guessing games, I really respect the audience because it's very apparent that people aren't just going and looking the book up, while we're talking about it. People are actually trying to educate themselves and make a guess so that they can make a better guess next time. So, yeah, thank you.
So, where does that put it? I estimated a 6.0 universal at 175. So that puts it about 43% of the estimate. Again, this is all guesswork because, again, this is such a rare comic book. It just doesn't trade hands very often at all. And so we're just estimating here, but about 43%. I think this book was well bought. That's where I'm at. It's rarer than Action 1. It's the second Superman cover. It presents really well. And for 75,000, why not?
It's a lot of money, but yeah. Yep.
But again, how long are you going to wait for another one of these to surface that isn't a dog's dinner? Right?
Exactly right. Yep.
Could you go back to the side-by-side of the 5.0 to the 6.0?
Oh, I don't. Oh, yeah, here.
Okay. If you look at the background, the 5.0 might actually be darker than what it's showing because there's a massive difference between those whites.
The whites, yeah, I noticed that.
Like the background white's not the whites on the cover.
Exactly. Yeah.
My eye always goes to the white behind the number, the numerical grade, and I try to see how true white that is to see how true the actual
that's a good
colors
one.
are.
Yeah,
Because when I worked at auction houses, that's what we did to try to get the truest color. If that was pure white, which it should be, all the other colors should get adjusted.
Yeah.
So on the left, it does look a little dull, and on the right, it looks more like a true white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a bonus in this segment. I have a would you rather. So let's look at this book. This book here sold actually pretty recently. It's a 2.5. It presents pretty well for a 2.5, right? You're looking at it going, there's no pieces missing. I don't see a major tear. This one sold on Metropolis, but page quality here is creamed off-white. And I'm reading these graders' notes saying, man, this was just a bad day away from being a purple label book. Top spine, dried glue. Center spine, dried glue. Bottom spine, dried glue. Interior, dried glue. Staple cover detached. Bottom spine, moderate spine split. Top spine, spine split. Center spine, spine split. Top left cover, small stain. So this one was...
That should be restored.
Presumably split
this was.
And then glued, and then somebody basically cut the glue so that it was no longer holding the cover together, but didn't remove the glue.
Yeah.
Which is okay. Glue, PVA glue is actually archival, so it's not like it's damaging it like tape would be.
Yeah.
And that's why CGC does this.
Yeah.
That's why it presents so well, but the numeric grade is a 2.5. So, anybody want to guess what this hammered for in the last year? You're going to be close to the 60K because this is our would you rather, just as a clue.
Oh, that's funny because I was going to say like 65.
Okay, 65.
Yeah. I could honestly
Anybody else?
I could see 75 and even maybe a bit more than the conserved copy because this presents so well for the technical grade, despite what we talked about. The reds are nice. There's no pieces missing. It looks at arm's length like a mid-grade copy. I mean, I could see how someone pays more for this than that conserved. So.
But then they're also reading the reader's notes going, there's a bunch of glue on it. I don't know. It really is this is a mixed bag to me, this book. It's one of those books that has certain qualities that are quite negative to me, and also some qualities that are quite high. And then where do you weigh them? And I think it comes down to personal preference. This is why we say buy the book, not the grade, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we've talked about this before. Certain defects really bother certain people, and they just are uninterested, or if they were grading the book, they would really ding the book heavily for that defect.
Yeah.
So, let's see.
This is going to be one of those results that's going to aggravate me because it's going to show the effect of that freaking label being blue rather than purple. Because
it should be blue, though.
We'll see. It is technically correct to be blue.
Yeah, it should
be
blue.
I mean, come on. You wouldn't have put glue there if you weren't trying to do tear seals.
Well,
what they did is they cheated the system.
But the splits are accounted for. The splits are why this is a 2.5 instead of a 5.
Shelby, just to clarify, in my opinion, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I'm almost certain that the reason that we're reading on the label, this book, if it was graded prior, was in a purple label slab, and then someone got it. They removed where the glue was serving a purpose, but it's still there, no longer serving a purpose. This was a extra removal job.
Yeah.
So it's to me, I could actually now see why this could go for a lower price, because there could be a lack of understanding exactly what you're buying here, and you could be looking at it saying very well, yes, this should be purple label, but you don't understand the nuance of how glue is viewed in relation to serving a purpose or not. So
yes, my point exactly. Thus,
So, Phil, your guess was again?
I'll stand by my guess because I would say that I know enough people that
I don't
buy
remember
books
what
at
it
this
was,
price, and they're
65.
65.
65. Okay.
Yeah.
My buddy Mike is at 48K
I'm
and
at 50.
Jason's at 24K.
No, it's off-white pages. Cream to off-white.
Creamed off white. Anybody else want to guess before we reveal?
50.
Go ahead, aggravate me.
Jim's at 50, Ben's at 70, and Jason, the pages are whole, just split right down the glue line would be the presumption. Otherwise, they would say there's some material missing. Here we go.
See?
Should have gone higher.
So this one sold on Metropolis. Actually, this was the one that sold pandemic era. So this was the last.
sold
This
a
is just
bit
how
ago.
rare these
Wow.
are. They just don't trade hands very often.
Yeah.
So this is March of 2019.
Look,
87,000.
if someone hadn't cut, like Phil said, if this was in its original purple label, if someone hadn't broke it out, cut the glue where it wasn't serving a purpose, but it's still there, this thing would only be about a $15,000 to $20,000 book. Okay. And it got this high because of that label being blue. And
Oh yeah, but then again,
That's
that
the
aggravates.
name of the game. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's
But you're
That's the name
right.
of the
But a game. You hit it on that head there, Phil.
yeah. No, Shelby, if you want aggravation, try removing color touch from like a $60,000 book. That when you resub it, you have to make sure all of it's removed because you can't just have it get graded with a purple label again. And then, so what do you do if it does come back? You just don't have it come back with a purple label. You have to make sure it's also, some of this game is, I don't wish it upon anyone.
all right. So the big question, would you rather? You get the 2.5 previously restored with restoration removed, some dried glue, presents really well, cream to off-white, non-conserved copy on the left. On the right, you have Action 7 in a 6.0 conserved. The only conservation note is cleaned cover. Would you rather?
6.0 clean cover all day, every day.
All right.
No, I like if the photography is correct on here and the colors are actually that much deeper on the 2.5, I can remove glue and do tear seals. So I'm doing the 2.5 and
with a
doing-
plan. With a
with a
plan to
plan,
remove the
plan
glue
to-
and conserve it.
remove the glue and do tear seals, conserve it, and send that bitch back and get a 6 or a 7.
Well, just to be clear, I thought the same thing initially, but if you look at the book, it looks like there's a piece missing on the lower right. There's some abrasion on the top, and you start looking at the accumulation of defects. I don't remember what the back cover looks like.
The back cover has a big shadow on it, I think.
Even if you're conserving it, I could see the grade cap just beneath the other copy. However, I would still pick the one on the left because the reds look nicer and you're never going to get the reds back no matter what you do. So
exactly.
Yeah.
I think I'm going with the 6.0 because I think by the time you remove the glue from the other copy, if in fact that's what you want to do, there's only two ways to do that. You're either scraping it all off and losing paper, or you're taking it off with solvents and you're getting some,
I'd love to see a comparison.
I'm with Jim. Also, Jim, we get an extra 10 grand. We can buy another book with that 10 grand. So,
hell yeah.
Well,
I'd actually like to see a comparison between the left and the right with the same background, because there's not photo manipulation, but there's definitely some distortion going on with the colors.
The Metropolis photography is clearly different, right? They have a black background, whereas Heritage uses white. So, all right, that was fun.
And if you'd like to know how to remove glue, then you can go and purchase a book that will outline those details for you.
Oh.
YG, Shelby, what book?
Knights of Old, I hear you. Says, in my experience, comparing the CGC graded numbers from a meta key like Action 1 to Action 7 isn't an accurate representation of the rarity of the book. Yeah, but gee, I mean,
7's still inexpensive.
number 7 sells for hundreds of, like you just saw the 5.0 sold for 150 grand. I don't think there's a lot of people that are like, that's not a mega key. I don't know. I guess there's a, where's your cutoff for mega? But
Yeah.
I just don't. I agree with you in general, in principle. I just think Action 7's in that group. That's all. But
Yeah.
points
Go
Just to
ahead.
clarify,
That's the
this
one I
is-
was about to point out. Yeah.
this is just a game that we play. As far as I know, Dr. Paul here is the one closest to playing within this kind of pool. But I don't think he's buying books that are quite 75K yet that I know of. But
correct. Just a game we all play together for fun and for bragging rights. Welcome to the show, by the way, David.
Yeah.
All right. So
But no, I think what he's asked, what I thought he was asking is, yes, Paul has the deep pockets to purchase books, but if we're talking about working on books, yes, Phil works on books expensive like this all the time.
yeah,
He's probably got he probably has an Action 1 in his desk drawer right now.
So I'm a hobbyist. I'm a collector and hobbyist conservator. I'm not a dealer, though. Like many collectors, from time to time, you get a double of something, you upgrade a copy, and you're going to sell something from time to time. Shelby used to have his own comic shop and still has a large inventory and sells on eBay and other places. Phil is a professional restoration and conservator, cleaner and presser to the stars. And he also, from time to time, buys a book for his own collection or to create some equity and flip it. Jim is also a comic book shop proprietor. And so those are our roles, since you asked. I collect, I've already owned basically like the Marvel Age. So these days I buy pretty much exclusively in the Golden Age.
I'd like to add, I don't deal with books that expensive.
What does your wall look like? What's the biggest book on your wall at your shop, Jim?
Right now, I don't have any huge keys. I have a FF 48 and 49.
Nice.
Like just in shop.
Yeah, very cool. Phil, let's highlight you, and you can show us something from your workbench.
Yeah, in the last year, really, I kind of hit that point where, again, I'm capping probably buying books at like 10 grand or so myself, but I've been working on bigger books in the range of books like this, which came in for restoration, removal, possible conservation. But I think we're going to try to get the best universal grade we can. If it's not up to snuff, then we're going to do some conservation and resub it. But I'm privileged enough to get to handle and work on some of these books. Like I've worked on books that are 6 figures. So I've had to lend my professional opinion to what I think should be done. And I feel like I've been fortunate enough to so far deal in really like ideal end results for books. So I try my best to like exercise discretion, but yeah, in a fun place to handle some of these books on that high end.
For the uninitiated, Phil, what is that book?
So this is one of you could probably say it's one of the top 5 Golden Age covers. It's Detective 31, probably next to Detective 27. And Batman 1 is probably the 3rd most valuable Batman cover. Restored low grade copies below good grade go for over $40,000. Restored copies. So I believe a 4.0 unrestored copy just sold for. I should know this because I know the person that bought it. It's somewhere between $150,000 and $225,000. So not chump change by any means. These are elite collectors, dropping as much
Right.
that some people drop in their entire duration of the hobby. So
Right. And at that point, Batman was every other cover, so that's his third cover appearance of Detective Comics and overall, obviously.
That's right.
Awesome. Well, Eric, welcome to the show. Jim, you want to start with your video? Do you want to narrate over it, or do you want to start with your slide deck?
Let's start with the video.
All right, we're going to play this video. I apologize. It's in vertical format, but Jim is going to narrate through it. Jim, I slowed it down to half speed from what you sent me, so it should just be a little bit easier to narrate through. And let me pause it here. And do you want to set it up and then I'll play?
All right. I'll be posting this video again on my Instagram, the sped up version. But pretty much I was just trying to highlight how much you can get out of a book through one wet stack or one pressing using the wet stack method. So I decided I'd just go beginning to end from using the comic clean to just wet clean the cover to using the wet stacks and then everything from there.
And for the uninitiated, wet stack.
Define what wet stack is.
Top level summary is.
Wet stack is when you're hydrating some of the stacking layers. So you can hydrate a book, I'm guessing through osmosis, pressure, and heat to get everything out instead of having to put it in a humidity tank. I just have wet stacks available to go all the time, so I can just throw one in there. If I need extra humidity for deeper creases, I can double up, throw a second wet stack in there because each wet stack raises the moisture level by X amount of percent.
Right.
And no offense, I mean, you're saying wet stack, but really what you're saying is humidified copy paper.
Yes.
Okay.
So when we talk about the trinity in comic book pressing, it's heat, pressure, and humidity, right?
Yes.
And we use all three of those to get good results with pressing. One of the things that slows you down the most and one of the things that gives you the most headaches is humidity, because to humidify a book in a humidity chamber like a humidor takes some time, and it takes especially some time if you need uniform humidity throughout the entire book, because that water has to penetrate, that water vapor, which is gas phase water, has to enter the book and penetrate all the way in. Also, if you're not careful with how much hydration you've put in a book through a humidity chamber and your pressure and your temperature settings on your press, it can cause problems. It can ripple a book. It can cockle a book. It can really, and it also can create problems down the road where a book looks great when it comes out, but you have reversion later. So the big benefit here, well, there are several big benefits, but one of the big benefits here is rather than a book sitting in a humidification chamber for a long time and then limiting how many books you can do in a day, how often you can clean and press a book, Jim puts a stack of copy paper in the humidity chamber, and the book never goes in the humidity chamber. Copy paper comes in, and
You're breaking up a bit, Paul.
Oh, Paul, your audio is cutting out there.
All right. Well, why don't we? The point is that.
Well, and let me add, if you don't mind, Paul.
Yeah.
So when you do also with the humidity chamber, you cannot control what gets moist. So the entire book is going to get moist within the humidity chamber. By using this wet stack method, you can actually more directly place moisture to a specific area, such as the cover, without having to worry about, all the pages taking on moisture. Now, your only other way that you would achieve that is through like a handheld steamer. And of course, you're going to then have unevenness in which the moisture is dispersed across that cover, for example, by using a handheld steamer. So by having a whole copy sheet humidified, you get an even distribution of moisture in that specific area that you want. And again, I'll use the example of a cover. So if I place it near the cover, of course, those pages closest to the wet stack is going to enjoy most of that humidification.
Yep. So Jim's going to show us practically how he does it, and I'll just let him narrate, and we'll roll the video.
Okay, I'm getting ready to clean the book at this point in time, so I'm just locating the centerfold, and there's a backer board. When I do any wet cleaning, I usually put a piece of 65-pound paper under the cover. That way it doesn't go through the cover into the pages underneath. I don't usually wear gloves when I'm doing a lot of cleaning. I'm not going to lie. I need the tactile sensation of the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you don't have to. We're past that. If people are watching this and think you need to wear gloves to handle even the most delicate books, that's a common misconception.
Yeah. But you've one pass to put Comma Clean on, and then one pass to wipe it off.
To remove any excess moisture, because Comma Clean's really there to work the sizing, not work the paper.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think we all know, God, I'm blanking. It's my head cold.
Mackie Clean or?
Not Mackie Clean, the surfactants aren't really.
Like a Triton X or?
Yeah, you shouldn't just, surfactants aren't good for paper. That's why I try to just limit the Comma Clean to the sizing on the front cover, or the sizing on the cover. That way I'm pulling dirt up and not saturating the paper.
Mm-hmm.
And that also helps, like when I'm doing the cotton round cleaning or the eraser cleaning. This book didn't need much actual cleaning, but you can see I had my supplies all ready. My workstation is a mess.
Nah. It's the mark of a genius, I think.
A mad genius. Ha ha ha.
So now just a cotton round wipe.
Yep. If it was dirtier, I'd use the eraser, then followed by the dry erase pad and possibly even the gum eraser.
So 20-pound wet stack. This is a sheet of 20-pound copy paper.
Yep. I'm putting it 3 pages in. I've played with it like on top the cover for direct humidity, under the cover. I get ripples and stuff like that when I do it that way. 3 pages in, it's humidifying the pages above and below it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Phil.
Can you just pause the video just for 1 second? I just have a quick question.
I can.
So watching this method, I'm curious. Is this something that's primarily done on books like Bronze Age and newer? Because looking at
I've done it on all ages.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, I've done it all the way up to Spawn from like 2 years ago with the thick glossy paper.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
And I've gone back to books from the 50s. Like, I think I did this on a first appearance of Blackhawk earlier last year.
I'm thinking like early 60s Marvel, where the cover inks, are very volatile.
It's great for those because you're not directly applying the humidity to the cover.
Yeah. Cool.
And the sizing back then sucked.
Yeah.
And a word about the 20-pound cardstock that you call the wet stack. That just basically goes in your humidity chamber like 24 or 48 hours. You just take a small stack and throw it in there, right?
I take a stack of probably 20 to 50, depending on my workload looks like for the month. And I'll change the water out every other week. And then at the end of the month, I'll clean the humidity tank out. I make sure I put a little bit of bleach in the water just to stop any mold growth during the week or two. I'll just take stacked paper, throw them in there, and leave them, set it and forget it for a long time. That way they're just always available.
You always have fully saturated paper ready to go.
Yes.
Welcome, Sales Boy, to the channel, to the show. Jason wants some clarity about the requirement for your nails before starting. Could you clarify, please?
Well, my nails are very pretty. My 4-year-old daughter opened up a salon in my comic shop the other day.
I love that.
Called
That's
Salon
awesome.
de la Whitney. So I was one of her clients, and she did a
Very
darn good
nice.
job.
Very
Head
pretty.
on over to Salon de Whitney.
I love it.
Please support. Ready to roll again?
Yes.
All right. So
Stack and press boards should be available to the market soon. They're not from me, but a fellow presser, Chris Trump. Fantastic presser, great product. I cannot recommend them more. I think I've told Paul this before. I thought Chris was just a good presser. No, these stack and press boards elevate the game.
I have also got a sneak preview of those boards. They are amazing. I hope Chris brings them to market soon. They're basically game changers for pressing.
They really are. I
Yeah.
messaged Chris earlier tonight because I wanted to get a stack of them for my cold pressing technique that I've been working on, because I've been getting some crazy results from just cold pressing.
So this isn't about that product, but just another sneak preview of it. It not only does it give better results for the press, but you don't consume all of the paper and all of the stacking materials that you normally consume. So
Yeah.
it's just a huge saver, not only of money, because those things, what do they? I don't know. I added up the stack a few times, and my stack is 17 cents or whatever. Okay, big deal. But also just all that's going either in a landfill or in the recycle bin. Nope. You just reuse these boards over and over again. They're really
I like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I cannot wait till Chris goes to market with these.
Yeah.
I am pumped about them.
I am too. Yeah.
Not a paid advertisement either. Just
same. Yeah. I mean, he sent me I'm basically a beta tester for him, but I actually thought just again, unpaid plug, but I prefer using quite a bit of humidity generally in my pressing. I'm probably going to use less because I'm probably going to do more wet stacks now that Jim's brought this to our attention. When Shelby and I were doing research for the book, we came across a few other people doing similar things. And I thought, well, I don't know if these pressing boards are great because of how much humidity I like to use. But then I used them. They work so well that I flipped it. And I was like, yeah, I just need to use less humidity so I can take advantage of these pressing boards. So yeah, if they're good enough to make me change my set in ways for that, I've developed for my best results, they're that good.
Yeah.
But back to on topic here. 65 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes.
Yes, 165, 15 minutes. And this is pretty much self-explanatory if you read the text above.
Yeah.
But I remove the wet stack, I flip it, and then I repeat the process on the backside. Sometimes if a book doesn't have a lot of defects, you can skip the flipping part. But I personally prefer to treat the entire book, not just one side of it.
Mm-hmm.
In this next part, I remove all the stacking layers. And when I pull the wet stack out, you can see where the humidity escaped.
Mm-hmm.
But I replace all the stacking layers, backing board, and everything, just because I don't want to be introducing more humidity to the book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want the 65 pounds that have been humidified to stay in the book.
Mm-hmm.
I done humidified, now I'm
Makes
flat.
sense. Yeah. So now it's just press as normal.
Yep.
Yeah.
165, 5 minutes, 24-hour cold press. Let's see some before and afters. And if you want to, Paul, you can go to the before and after slides I sent you.
Yeah.
They're kind of crappy on this vertical presentation. I'll do a 16 by 9 next time I make a video for you guys.
So one benefit that I'm seeing to this immediately is apparently there's less of a need for what's the word I'm looking for? Forgive me, it's tired. Taking like a ball bearing and like working out deep back fire. Like
I rarely use dotting tools anymore. Ball bearings, hot shots are pretty much a thing of the past unless I have a really, really stubborn crease on the cover.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, if you throw an extra backer board in the centerfold, you can eliminate the use of doing a lot of, spine work.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought I had it actually loaded. I don't, so it's just going to be a couple more seconds to load. Here we go.
Well, that's me.
Yeah.
Just before and after of the front cover, you can see there's not much rippling or difference or even flaring at the corners. There's a little bit, but that's often to be expected. Deep crease, it broke the paper fibers. If you look, you can still see remnants of the crease on the inside, but it's nowhere near as deep and it is flat.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah.
All those finger dents, no ball bearing, no dotting tool, nothing. That was just a single press.
Yeah.
I love
these. These are the kind of finger bends that usually require some work.
Well, yeah, like all those finger bends would have taken me probably 30 to 45 minutes to work them all out, and then go to a press, pull it out, and then see what was still left over.
Absolutely. Similar
you can see
here.
the stacking curl in here and how enough moisture was added where it got flattened again. There's a huge crease in the shadowy figure. Like you can see it right there in the before picture. It did break the paper fibers and color, but I can't fix that. The crease is no longer there.
Yeah.
Looks as good as you could hope it to look.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
The books are boss. They'll tell me what to do. This pretty bad crease on the left picture, you can see how it just got pushed out and became flat. That would have taken a chamfer board and, a lot of hot shots to get out prior. Probably 2 hot shots with how deep that crease is.
Yeah. Not for nothing, but the UPC box is whiter too, right?
I don't know if the UPC box is wider or not, or just difference in the picture.
I mean, the wood background looks the same.
Yeah.
Could be. All right. Conservative.
Yeah, just all the just tiny dimples that comics get over the years, pulled them right out. I think the pictures really speak for themselves in this one.
Yeah. The results you got, it's not that they wouldn't have been achievable by other methods. It's just that it's so much more efficient to use the method that you've developed.
I believe this took me, 15 minutes, 5 minutes. So 35 minutes of actual press work. And I do pull the book out when it's still warm when I replace the layers. I don't want the book to cool down too much as I'm replacing things because I don't want reversion to start in my hands.
Sure.
Yeah. So it is time sensitive. You want to you're pulling it out. You're not going to pull it out and then go get a sandwich and come back and then get back to it. You got to be doing it quickly.
Right? Ben, what sort of pressure levels applied? I do it just like I'm pressing a regular book.
Yep.
I don't use any added pressure. I don't use any less pressure.
So comparative pressure the same.
Very
Oops. Cool. There we go. All right. Next here.
This one just kind of shows that dimpling's been removed.
Yeah.
I hate the comic dimpling, and I don't even know what causes it.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh, that was a significant little crunch there.
Yeah.
Yep. Crunch gone, finger dents gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, the math that you already said, if you were like 15, 15, 5, that already is less time than the 45 minutes that you said you'd have to spend to remove the finger dents, not even taking into account the press time. So it's like it's a no-brainer.
Well, not just the press time, the going back and reworking, because how many times do you press a book, take it out, inspect it, and then go, I need to work on this more. I need to work on this more. Like, I know when I'm working on books for some customers, I am not a speedy presser. I am not a conveyor belt. I am there for the quality. I am not there for the quantity. Yeah. So I will pull a book out. If it takes 5 presses to get it done, it's getting pressed 5 times. Yeah.
Yeah. As a hobbyist, I'm the same. And you can easily spend an hour with a tack iron, because I just kind of approach it conservatively and slowly. And I heat a little, work a little with a pressing tool, and then heat a little, work a little. People who've watched the channel for a while have seen it. It's slow. It's tedious in my hands. There may be people more skilled or more confident who do that much quicker. I'm sure there are, but this is a way to just deal with all of that in a much more efficient manner. And not for nothing, it's got to be better for the book in terms of the working with those dotting tools. I know we need to do it sometimes to flatten out material, but
when you're using the dotting,
I can't imagine it's great for paper fibers.
Well, you're just damaging all the paper fibers and then smushing them flat so they all look consistent, but you're still damaging everything around it. Another thing I'm just going to mention right now for people who will be trying the wet stack, if you notice you aren't getting the results when you pull the book out, inspect it, and when you flip it over, pull it out, inspect it, you can keep doing this like 15-minute press process over and over until you get the results you're looking for.
And would you alternate wet stack every other one, or would you keep using a wet stack until you got the result you wanted?
Keep using the wet stack until I get the result I wanted. Like, I've done them enough, because when you pull it out, it's not going to be the flat, shiny book you see. It's going to be a little wavy, and we've all pulled a book out of a press too soon before. It's going to look like that. So you need to really train your eye to look at the finger dents, everything you can see there, to see if you need to do the wet stack again when you flip it over. Just keep flipping it back and forth like a pancake or something.
Yep. Maurice wants to know, the humidity from the 3rd page wet stack goes through the dry 65-pound paper behind the cover, then to the cover.
Correct. And in this case, it also goes from the cover to the press and stack board, and then back into the cover. And then the 65-pound pushes the dents out from the inward pressure.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So, are there any times that you would recommend not using this technique for whatever reason?
It takes a little bit longer if you're doing like a Baxter series book from the early 80s on DCs. If you're doing like Golden Age books where they have the linen covers, you may need to do the step more often, just because the covers are thicker, so it takes more moisture to go through. But if you're doing a Golden Age book, you're probably using 65-pound paper, a page in, not directly under the cover, and then I just move the wet stack a 4th page in.
A couple other questions here. Eric says 65 is also from the, I assume he means wet stack. The 65 came out of your humidity chamber?
No.
So I don't think that's correct, Eric.
Dry.
Yeah, I mean, unless what you mean by that is there is a 65-pound page during the wet stack, but it the 65-pound cardstock did not come from the humidity chamber. It goes
No.
in dry.
I have pressed with 65-pound wet stacks before. I find they hold too much actual moisture, and the time it takes to dry that out is really negating any time savings from doing this method.
Yeah, I think what
Good for
Eric
square mounds. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shelby. Go ahead.
No, I think, yeah, kind of what they're getting at, Jim. And so, and I would like to know a little bit more explanation on this too, is they're kind of finding it hard to imagine that 3 or 4 pages down, you have a humidified piece of copy paper. That moisture is traveling through those 3 or 4 pages, then traveling through a 65-pound cardstock and moisturizing, for a better term, or humidifying your cover, right? So it's just, you know, and I agree. It's, you know, it's a little bit difficult to imagine that the humidity be able to travel through all those layers of paper and that thick 60-pound cardstock to moisten the cover to be able to relax those fibers in order to smooth out creases. So can you speak to that?
I got you there, Boo. Go to the kitchen, grab a towel, wet it down, bring the towel out. Make sure it feels pretty dry to the touch. Okay, that paper or that towel's dry. Now wring the water out. It's the pressure from the press, the heat that's creating a more humid area inside, like what, a half-inch, maybe quarter-inch gap.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of room for the moisture to go, so it goes through the
The
book.
only place it can.
Yeah. The pressure is pressing it through the book. The heat is pushing it out, and you can see it on the used wet stack that I showed in the video. All the waves coming out of it. You can actually map where the moisture is coming out. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah.
Or at least makes you a believer.
Yeah, it absolutely can travel. The humidity absolutely can travel in that manner, and in fact does. Between the pressure and the heat both act to mobilize the water, as does capillary action and just diffusion. So all of those forces are mobilizing the water into the rest of the book. Before Phil, we get to you, I've had this up for a moment. Jason wants to know if we have experience with square bounds with this method.
Yes, I have done square bounds and pulps both with this method. With the square bounds, since I don't know about you guys, I never feel comfortable putting 65 pounds all the way up to the glued edge with staples, like that.
Yeah. No, I don't do
so
that.
with the square bounds, I'll use 2 or 3 wet stacks through the book. Instead of doing that. That way you really have to account for the thickness of the book. So I go through and try to make sure I get everything.
I have some videos on my channel, just if you search square bounds on my channel. The way I do it is I put a piece of copy paper every 6 to 8 pages throughout the whole square bound. And so if you are going to put 2 or 3 wet stacks in there, I would imagine you would just replace 2 or 3 of your rest of your regular stacks. So I think that's normally like 6 sheets of 20-pound copy paper that I would typically put in a square bound book. And so maybe 2 or 3 of those would be wet stacks. Makes sense to me.
That's the one.
So I do want to highlight this. Go ahead, Phil.
Yeah, Phil.
I was going to say, because Ben just asked a good question too, but I just have a quick one I want to ask first. Just for those at home watching who are like, oh, I'm going to go do this. My first thought doing it that I could see accidentally kind of causing issues if you kind of jump the gun. I'm going to assume, Jim, that you would not recommend someone take like a spray bottle and just spray, some copy paper that they're going to put in haphazardly and then be like, cool, now this is wet and I can put it in, right? Like you want to thoroughly humidify.
Speak to that right now. Shelby and I have briefly talked about this. I have a non-scientific method of measuring the humidity. I just got a humidity level from like the hardware store that tests the humidity in drywall for mold and everything. I was able to use that to get a baseline for pretty much what all the comics were before. I cannot say for 100% certain that is the humidity content of the book. I just know that now equals X.
Right.
And you can use like that. I know using that method, my wet stacks are at a 54% humidity level when they go in the book. And that's after leaving them in there for like a week or two, like thoroughly saturated. If I was to use an atomizer, which I have done before, and that's just in a pinch, you know, I'm working and then suddenly my humidity tank is out of wet stacks and I'm like off. I will go ahead, spritz a piece of paper, but I will use my humidity gauge to check, and I will not put it in the book until it gets to that desired 54% level.
So you don't know that exact number, but you know relative, and you know on your meter at 54, it's going to work well.
Yeah,
whether or not that's actual 54%, you know, moisture content, you can't say for sure, but
exactly. It doesn't really matter. A percent is a percent.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's just being able to see that relative change from one point to another point, which is what Jim is doing. And it is perfectly rational science, right? Is you're just doing it on a relative scale versus an absolute scale, because the only way to actually measure the moisture content in paper is through what's called the oven method, which is to bake it and then weigh it before and after, and that tells you the moisture content. But it's a destructive process and etc.
Yeah.
And you would have to think too that, let's say, for example, you have a humidity, he got, pronounce it for me, Paul.
Hygrometer.
Thank you. Inside your chamber, you know that thing's gonna get up to like 92%, you know, sealed. But you know, the meter we're using is only measuring like 40 or 50%. So something's not measuring quite right. But again, that's not the point. It's that absolute or that relative value.
Yeah, well, you're always measuring.
Test your press.
Yeah, you're always measuring relative humidity. So relative humidity is basically how much humidity do you have relative to something that would be 100% saturated. So obviously the saturation point of air and paper are different, right? So the relative humidity is going to be different, even if they're in equilibrium. But you don't have to get that scientific about it. The point is you have a method of measuring basically how saturated you want it, and you know that you'll get good results at that level. And that gives you the flexibility to wet the paper in different ways. But the simplest thing is just put it in a completely saturated humidity tank and leave it there until it's in equilibrium and use it, right?
Yeah, I personally do not advocate using the atomizer unless you really know what you're doing. Otherwise you are no.
And this is from the guy who really worked out the details of the hop methods. So I would listen to him. Ben says, are you using SRP, parchment paper? What is the humidity percentage in your house? So let's deal with those one at a time.
Okay, SRP paper.
Go ahead.
No, I do not use it. I very rarely use SRP. I have a process I'm working on where I do heavily rely on SRP, more parchment than actual silicone release paper. But that's a topic for a different day. For most presses, I do not use SRP. Before I came up with the wet stacks, was like Paul, and I really like to over humidify my books. And if you use SRP paper when you over humidify your books, you're taking the actual moisture content of the book and raising it through the roof. Because so
you're saying over humidify, but you know that has a certain connotation. I just want to say deeply humidify. If you press it correctly, it's not a problem, right?
Yeah.
But
it's been.
This is the reason I stopped using SRP as well, because I prefer using a lot of humidity, and a lot of humidity and SRP don't work well together. So I went away from SRP quite a while ago. That said, though, the stacking or the pressing boards that you got from Chris Trump have a coating on them similar to SRP.
Oh.
So you're going to, if you want to adopt those, you're going to want to adapt your methods to use them, which you have, though. This is one of the reasons why the wet stack is great, right?
The press and stack boards really elevated the results I was having from the
Cool.
And I've been using the wet stacks for 5 years now.
Yeah, at least years that I know about. Yeah, at least a few years that you disclosed it to me. But sorry to cut you off. I just want to wrap this one idea up here. With
I do too. So I want
pressing boards.
the pressing board. So
the point here is that you would not be able to deeply humidify a book and use that pressing board and get the results you got.
Honestly,
but your wet stack allows it.
I've not tried deeply humidifying a book and then using the press and stack.
I talked to Chris about it. He said, yeah, not recommended.
Okay.
Right. So for those of us that don't have Chris's boards, for the outside, we would just do our regular glossy side down backing board with like a piece of cardstock.
Yeah. If you don't have the SRP boards, just whatever buffer layer you're normally using between your books and your plates. Just do that. And of course, I'm going to address the humidity percent in my house.
Yeah.
I press a lot in the back of my shop, and I keep the humidity there at 43 to 50% relative humidity at all points in time. And I try to keep it closer to the 50%.
Excellent. Thank you.
If you let your humidity go too low, your relative humidity, then you'll start getting a lot of waves in comics, which sounds kind of ass backwards. Sorry for the cursing. But as the book dries, the humidity is all going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's causing the waves in the books and everything.
Mm-hmm.
That's why if you put a pressed book, not properly pressed book, inside a bag and board, the top of it gets that bacon texture and look to it, but the bottom doesn't. It's because all the humidity's running out from the edge of the book.
Yep. I want to highlight Sales Boy's comment here.
Everyone's favorite word.
Shout out to Regina Franklin. This is her favorite word.
Funny thing, when I
also
first
check out Sales Boy's channel. He's doing some fun stuff on YouTube.
When I first came up with this method, I borrowed a phrase from friends, and I was calling it the moist maker.
Mm-hmm.
So
I like wet stacks more. Nothing against moist, but
the wet stack sounds more professional, and I think it's easier for people to remember. When I'm putting names to things, it's not necessarily to boost my own ego or anything, but when I'm talking about something, I want people to be able to identify what I'm talking about.
You don't want a stigma. We already know moist is a word that like a percentage of people are like, I don't like hearing that word. So.
So right, in normal use, Ben, no liquid water other than what resides in the bottom of the humidity tank where the wet stack paper lives.
Correct. No liquid water, only dry water. Sorry. The wet stack, only the paper, no other liquid goes on the book.
So let's talk about the wet stack, your method. As you said, this is something that you've been using for over 5 years. I remember you posting years ago about the moist maker, and you disclosed to me what you were actually doing a while back. So this is something that has been practiced by others. When Shelby and I were doing our research for the book, we interviewed a lot of people, and we found reference to something similar where saturated paper, rather than putting your item of interest in the humidity chamber, you put paper or blotters or something else in the humidity chamber and then brought them in contact. That said, it's just not been widely discussed in our community.
Nope.
And you developed it independently. You stumbled across it on your own. You didn't find it from these other places where we came across it. And
I actually
I
asked
think,
a lot of senior pressers. Like
Yeah.
I went around and I asked if it would work. And at the time I was talking to people, everybody's like, it will not work. You
It will not
get or you will get reversion from it, 100% guaranteed.
Yeah.
It's not enough. Everybody was telling me, I was crazy.
Yeah.
Uh,
By the way, that's a great way to sort of demonstrate novelty, or at least independent discovery. That you spoke to experts and they said you were crazy is actually if you're applying for a patent, for example, demonstrating that experts in the field said that this was a crazy idea is a way to almost be guaranteed to be awarded a patent. So there's an actual legal standard for novelty. And, again, you developed this independently, you're not claiming that nobody has ever done this before or thought of it before. But from my perspective, again, it's not something we've been talking about in our community. It's not something that's in any of the published books that we're familiar with. And it's something that you've taken quite a bit of time to work out the details of, right? Like, so for example, I could imagine, even if you said to me, Paul, there's this cool thing you can do. You can hydrate a piece of paper and then do this. And I might say, oh, it should go right behind the cover. It should go one page in behind the cover. It should go on top of the cover. I could imagine a lot of different ways. And in fact, when Shelby and I interviewed folks for the book, there are different ways that people use this technique. So just because even if you told me, Paul, this is the gist of it, I do this, I'm not sure that I would get results. I'm sure I wouldn't get results like you have without going through doing this thousands of times and figuring out 3 pages in is kind of the sweet spot. And, one press like this, one dry press, make sure you change out the paper. Those details matter. And so even if somebody else has done this before, just exactly like hop and just exactly like photo bleaching, hats off from my perspective to the people who have actually worked out the details and put together a practical guide. We don't have to say, well, I was the first one ever to think of this or do this. There's actually greater value many times in being the one who developed a practical guide for the method. And so again, I want to put it in sort of historic perspective, at least from my perspective, in that, this isn't something we've never heard of, but it's something that isn't widely practiced to my knowledge. Again, it's not in any of the 3 or 4 published books on the subject. And it's not something I see day in and day out in the forums that I, frequent. So working out the practical methods and sharing it with the community is really a big deal. And I really appreciate you coming on to do that.
There's no such thing as an original idea. Like, there just isn't. Everything you've done has been tried before. I've talked to at least one presser who has decades of experience, who actually was saying that I stole this from him. I've never talked to the guy about pressing. Like, he's never shared the results. I even directly approached him and I'm like, if you want to, we can share notes. And he's like, no, I only share my methods with my friends. So, this is why nobody's heard of it. Nobody talks about it. It's these stupid little, industry secrets and, all that stuff. And that's just, you're leaving yourself open for other people to discover it on their own if you don't bring it to the people.
Sure.
Like, you have no claim on it if you're keeping it your secret.
And that's one of the stances Paul and I have taken, because knowledge is power. Isn't that what the old cartoon was? Right? Knowledge is power. Right? And the more knowledge we can get out there to people, I think is better and will actually help the hobby versus harming it.
Absolutely.
It'll at least help the books in the long run.
Yeah, getting information out, disseminating knowledge, and you know, occasionally being wrong actually is fine. Like I had somebody recently comment on one of my videos and say, you know, I'm not trying to scrutinize or something like that. And I said, scrutinize away. I'm a scientist. I expect all my work to be scrutinized. And in fact, how am I going to get better if I don't get scrutiny in my work, right? But I think this is actually, you know, again, perfectly analogous to the situation with photo bleaching. Like there's no reason to fight, argue, or otherwise over this. There's no reason to somebody to say, I claim I invented it, whatever. And you know, Chris Trump's a friend of the channel and a friend of us and a co-author with you, Jim, in a previous work. He claims, you know, not to have invented it, but to have figured out how to practically apply it to comics in a way that nobody else had. And bravo. Right. And that's what, you know, I've put videos out saying, guys, it's nonsense to argue about this. Let's give credit where it's due. A practical guide for comic books is something that we desperately needed. And now we have, thanks to the folks who worked out all the details, including yourself and Captain Mike and Joe. Not forgetting anybody, am I? If I am, shout them out, Jim.
D'Angelo Long, John Sutter, Mike, of course, Joe Topowski, Chris Trump. Yeah, just such a great team.
Welcome to the channel and the conversation, Schism Yi. I'm not sure what this comment means, but if you came
Jim made a comment earlier about people telling him he was wrong in his hypothesis about the wet stack. So I'm not sure if that's a troll or someone with
yeah, please elaborate. And also
I don't have a rant to kick them.
MIT graduate? No, I'm a FAFO graduate, and I FAFO all the time.
If you came here to impress with your MIT graduate degree, you came to the wrong place because I was on the faculty at MIT. So hopefully you're here to be supportive. Hopefully you're here to be supportive, but if you're here to cause trouble, you came to the wrong place.
It was a Nathan dog that I bought at the train station and then walked over.
Oh, very good. All right. Well, that'll be fun to hear back from Schism Yi. And again, I'll just assume that was to be supportive. At any rate, I just want to reiterate, thanks, Jim. I really appreciate you sharing this. I think it's very significant. I think that I'm going to be practicing it, and I suspect, you know, incorporating it into my regular toolkit, and maybe we'll be elaborating on it in future editions of the book. Who knows? But
I really hope so. Like, I've done so many different variations of stacks with the wet press that there's essentially a stack for everything. Like, and sometimes you just have to play it by ear. You know, it's jazz sometimes too.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where the best pressers are at. Well, I think with that, we should wrap up. I don't know if anybody has any other closing remarks. Well, and I will say thank you to everybody. Thank you to AG and Archivist Adrift who brought you this episode. Thank you, Don Carter, for the super chat during this episode. Appreciate all of the viewers. We had lots of interaction today. Appreciate, as ever, my co-hosts. And again, safe travels to Larry. Thank you for all of the support on the book. We'll see you in the Facebook group. And I'll say until next time, take care of one another, and we'll let Shelby talk us out.
All right. Thank you all for joining in and visiting us tonight. I'm about to go watch the rest of the football game. But with that, remember, peace, love, and comics. Bye, all.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.